in, the door's open. It's our community, and I want you to meet a friend of mine. Her name is Kristy Childs, and she is the founder of an organization called Veronica's House. And would you just tell these lovely people what Veronica's House is?
Well, it's Veronica's voice.
Veronica's voice.
That's okay.
I said house.
That's
I know
fine.
It's voice. I'm sorry about that.
Because we're talking about the house.
Yes, we're trying to figure out how that she could buy a house to house the organization. So I had house on the brain. Okay.
Well, we've been in existence since 2000, and we work with women in our community that are involved in prostitution or prostituted by others. And we just really know we have got to get this home open, and we're determined to get this home open. We've ran a safe center for the last 14 years.
But you can't offer them much except short term.
Yeah. So the Safe Center, it just wasn't the answer. And partnering with different places in the community that offered, transitional living and such, while it can work for some people, when you have someone who has been involved in this life maybe since they were a teenager and now maybe they're in their 30s, they just really, to expect them to pay rent in 30 days is just a little bit too much.
But they don't know any other life. I don't care what kind of a life you have.
Right.
It's very difficult all of a sudden to be uprooted from that life and placed somewhere else.
Right.
So Veronica's voice needs a house, and I think that it's only fair to say that you run into difficulties sometimes in the neighborhood because they don't want a house there. And these women are not violent. They're not going to hurt anybody. And we're not talking about casts of thousands here. We're talking about no more than, a handful. So you help one person at a time. I asked Kristy if she would mind, Kristy was on the street as well, and I asked her if she would mind talking about her life and what motivated her to leave that life, and she didn't have a whole lot of assistance in doing it. So, go girl.
Well, I was brought up in a home that was violent and other abuses, and so I started running away. And it was through running away that my prostitution began. I didn't know it was prostitution.
You were how old?
12. And I was just trying to survive. And eventually I did end up with a pimp and was really indoctrinated with belief systems that are part of that life. Unfortunately, once you're in, it's extremely difficult to get out, especially when you don't have a community of support around you, you don't have family to turn to, and so I was just out there. And when I did get out, my experience doesn't happen to everyone. So I did have an experience that was really a spiritual experience, and I was 12 to 36, really
That's
trapped.
A long time,
it's a very
Kristy.
long time. I was actually 29 at the time that, almost 30 when this experience happened. And I was pregnant and I heard my son's heartbeat. And prior to that, I was right on the edge of suicide. So I had been making a plan and whatnot because I couldn't find a way out. And
there wasn't a way out,
no.
really.
No, there was nowhere to turn. So when I heard my son's heartbeat, God just spoke into my spirit and said, have your baby. I'm going to bring you out. I don't know what I was thinking, but I know that the feeling that came over me was belief. I believed that was going to happen for me, and it did. I didn't know what it looked like or how it was going to happen, but I just believed it. And so doors opened for me.
Don't you think, I want to stop a minute on that word belief. Don't you believe that as well, that when you have this within you that says, it's like the little train, I think I can, and it becomes inculcated into your whole being, and you begin to look and you see a little more clearly how the opportunities might be there.
Yes. Well, when you say see, it was so much like I was blind. but like this veil had been jerked away from my eyes, and I could see every opportunity that came my way that I could utilize to help me get out. And it took me 6 years
To get out.
to exit completely.
And in that 6 years, you had this child.
Yes.
Isn't that awfully hard to raise a child and work the streets at night?
I didn't work the streets. I got off the streets.
Got
I
off
did
the
a lot of risk reduction. And so when I finally was out, completely out, you know, I would go to work. I worked at the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, I would go to work. I would see these women. My mind would be out there with them. And I just really had a burden for them. One, I wanted to expose the truth of what prostitution really is. And
What
two,
is it? Let's stop right there. What is it?
it's violence. It's violence, and truly these women are victims. And they need to be given opportunities to make changes and to exit that life.
And they're not all runaways.
No.
They're not. I mean, some of them are abused at home, some of them are sold or forced into prostitution, and some of them are out there to earn enough money to go to school. They want to do.
I never met them, but I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know,
There was an organization here some years ago. It was called Coyote. Do you remember that? And that woman was a psychology in the School of Psychology at UMKC.
She was. I didn't know that.
Yes, she was.
They are a pro side, so they're for prostitution. I don't know that she was ever a prostitute.
I don't know that either, but she, you know, she was very involved.
I think I don't know her name, so
I can't remember. It's been too long.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
But she was, you know, earning money to go to school.
Oh.
Okay, what's number two?
Where was I?
Number one is violence.
It's violence.
What is prostitution?
It's paid rape. And the majority of women involved is what we need to look at to say what it looks like and what it is, instead of those small percent that say, oh, I went to school or it was very empowering for me. While that could be true for some people, it's going to be a very small margin of them. And we need to really look at what it is and the damage that it causes. You know, poverty, child abuse, women in marriages, you know, that have been victims of domestic violence, you know, that get out on their own and end up having to do whatever they have to do to take care of their children. You know, so we've seen a lot of circumstances that get women and girls into these places. And it's always what I have found, it's a lack of options. It's a lack of choices.
Well, and it's you know, it's obvious that and once you get in, as you said, the choices become even fewer than they were before. I think there's one word that you didn't use, and that within violence there is injury, there is murder, there is. I mean, I think it's a mistake to just leave it with violence, because that's too general a word. I think it becomes very, very dangerous.
Oh, extremely, yeah.
Were you ever hurt?
Yes. Yes.
And you think, oh my God, what?
I've experienced a lot of violence myself. I've seen violence done to others, especially running Veronica's Voice Safe Center. We've seen a lot of things the women have gone through. It's just very sad.
It's terribly sad.
I mean, Veronica's Voice is even named after a young woman in our community that was murdered.
And you knew her?
I did know her.
But you know, I think it's only appropriate at this point. We've talked about the women, and by the way, all prostitutes are not women. There are some men out there that are prostitutes, but we're going to stick with the women right today. I think we need to talk about the men who solicit the services of these women. Talk about them a little bit.
Well, we have noticed there is a shift happening. There's a lot of talk happening, which is very good, to look at the Swedish model. The Swedish model, what they did in 1999 was they implemented the belief that we're going to pour money into social services to help women exit. We're going to look at the men who are purchasing and the men who are men or women who are profiting, and we're going to go after them. And so they started going after that. And so all law enforcement's focus was on the men that were buying.
In Sweden.
In Sweden. And other Nordic countries have adopted this now, along with several other countries. And they've been so successful. They have no trafficking into their country of, of victims. And they've noticed a huge decline in street prostitution as well as internet prostitution.
That's interesting.
So, because they're providing those services to help women exit. And it's just more of a holistic way to look at the issue, in the sense of, if we had one prostituted woman in this community of Kansas City, just one, and she didn't even have a pimp, but there would be 10 to 25 men that bought her every day. So that shows the
That wears me out to think about.
yeah, but that shows the discrepancy of, you know, the arresting factor being the one versus the 10 to 25. That's where the focus should lie. And we've got to create in our culture something that says it's not okay to buy people. It doesn't matter if it looks voluntary, because 9 times out of 10 it's not voluntary. And you know, when we're dealing with, you know, a culture that, first of all, we don't even pay women at the rate that we pay men. So there's the system of inequality within our culture. There is, you know, the dehumanizing, the objectifying, and exploitation of women in general. So we've got to create a culture where men really love women and honor them and respect them as equals. And, you know, how we do that is beyond, you know, my capabilities.
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
That is.
It's going to take everybody.
Yeah,
and, you know, there are good men out there.
Oh, a lot of good men.
There really are. And it's going to take the really good men to stand up and start fighting for this.
There's no question about it. But I honestly believe that we need to pull out a few things that you said. And I think that one thing that's important is that we cannot look at the issue of prostitution in the large. It's one by one by one. And the women that are in this life are human beings. They're people themselves, and not a member of a large group with no faces. They do have faces.
Yes.
And when we begin to look at those faces, then perhaps we will be a little more sympathetic with how'd you find the pimp, or did he find you? Or he, they're always a he, yes.
Generally, they're a he. I was on the streets of Denver and ended up running into, I guess, would be more like it.
You couldn't have been very old.
No, I wasn't. You know, the women were all like very encouraging to go home. Could it be that bad? You know, trying to talk me into doing something different. I was not going to go back to that home. So
you had no place else to go.
Right.
So you found this person.
Yeah.
Were you better off or worse off after you found him?
I was better off, unfortunately. You know, and that's just my story. You know, once I found him, or he found me, or however that really happened, I learned a lot. And I learned I was really being taken advantage of quite a bit.
You were young,
I was,
Kristy.
Yeah. So I was really being taken advantage of. And I learned a lot, and learned how to, I hate to say it, but to do it more to my benefit. And even though I
grew
had
up fast on the street. You grow up fast.
Yes, you did. And I learned that nobody does anything for nothing. And that's just that world, you know, and it is a subculture within our own culture.
Well, what made you, I mean, you left the street, but you had some things to take care of before you talked about Veronica's voice. What made you do that? What made you decide that you needed to establish a Veronica's voice of one kind or another?
Because I was out, and one time I was at a friend's house, at her mother's, and I was laying on the couch, and I don't know if I dreamed this, but I was laying there watching TV, and this young girl is at a payphone, or well, she's knocked around by some man, and I assumed it was her father, and she ran out of the door, and then she's at a payphone, and she had no one to call. And this is like part of my own story. It's very strange, but I saw it. It wasn't me. It was just another young girl. And then it showed her sleeping on a park bench, and she looked up and looked over, and there were two grown women leaning into a John's car, and they made eye contact. And it was like I was that kid, but it wasn't me that I was seeing. And I thought, my life is good now. But there's women out here that are hurting, and they're very misunderstood. I've got to do something. And, you know, and then when I would see them and go into my job, I couldn't focus on my work. I would be thinking about them. And it was just really kind of a mantle that I just took.
I think that's most interesting. You know, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about fear. Were you ever afraid?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I lived
hard.
with a lot of fear, yes.
I'm sure. I mean, that takes guts to stand and make an arrangement with some man you don't know anything about him. I mean, it's bad news. Well, I know that Veronica's voice has evolved somewhat from your first thought about helping some of these other women. And there is an organization in, it's called Magdalene House, and in Nashville that's been very successful. Talk about Magdalene House just for a minute.
They have a social enterprise called Thistle Farms, and the women work there. Not all of their women work there, but the ones that want to, they work there. They live in this house because it's really housing first.
Well, we have to have someplace to go.
Right, so it's housing first. And then they live there for 2 years. They don't have to worry about paying rent, but there's different milestones that they hit and different goals that are set. And they work at this social enterprise, and they
also have an 80% success rate.
They do. It's huge. I mean, with this population, it's so awesome. I mean, the first time I went there, I was like, I had to leave out because I had to regather myself or whatever. You know, I was crying. I couldn't breathe. I was like, this is it in action. And watching this community of women support and love one another, it was very overwhelming for me. And I know it's possible. And I know Kansas City, we can do that. You know, we can do it here. It's going to take the community partnering with us, walking alongside us. We can bring these women home.
Well, and you know, maybe this isn't the most supportive statement, but it's to the community's benefit to get these women off the street.
It is, yeah. I mean,
we're talking about disease, we're talking about injury, we're talking about children, we're talking about a lot of things that would be somewhat detrimental to the strength of the community and to the women in general.
Right, I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Becca Stevens, the founder, she says something about, like, it started with 5 women that the community helped change, but then those 5 women turned around and changed a whole community, you know, and the power in that. And they have so much support from their community down there. It's so beautiful.
Now, she's been in business about 20 years, has she not? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that boy is growing up that you've got.
My son, yeah, he'll be 22 like in a week.
Do many of these women have children?
They do. They do, and it's restoring their families as well and those relationships. And it can happen. And I know it, I think it's just an overwhelming topic for a lot of people, and the different things that are against these women. You know, it seems,
everything's against them.
Yeah,
really.
And it seems surmountable, but clearly it's not. I'm living proof. There's other women that are living proof, and this program that we're modeling now is living proof.
Well, I know that the Nashville Project generates about $1 million a year, and half of that goes back to the variety of women that come through the house. So that is a lot.
Yeah.
In the article I read about you, you talked about Jill. Talk about Jill just a little bit.
Jill we're about the same age. She, she's doing great things now, and completely out of the life. She's, I forgot the title she has.
She's some
crud.
sort of a manager in a.
Right, of a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
she's really high up in this big
Well, you
corporation.
do learn to manage people.
Yeah. So she's doing very, very well. When she came, she had a lot of warrants that had to be taken care of and a lot of things.
We're talking about
And-
arrest warrants here.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So just worked with her and walked alongside her. And it's really sad because all the women that were coming to the Safe Center, you had to pour into those that were willing to do the work. Some didn't really know how to, and because there was such an overload of need.
Well, some of these women are substance abusers, and that's a whole different.
True. Yeah. I
Are
would
most of
say
them?
I would say 99.9% are substance abusers. You know, if you had to see 10 to 25 men a day,
Oh, Hugh.
you would be using something, you know.
Yeah.
But just to deal with the life that you have. It's a coping mechanism.
Were you a substance
I
abuser?
definitely was.
But that's the first thing you had to do was kick that habit.
I didn't even have to. God took it away from me. In that moment, like I said, my son will be 22 next month. I've never been to drug treatment. It doesn't happen this way for most people.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
God just took it. I mean, what I experienced in that emergency room was truly a miracle. And my depression and my wanting to die was gone, and life changed for me.
I'm sure he's a nice boy.
He's great. He is fabulous.
Well, and so most of these women have children. 99% of them are substance abuse users, and there are many who would look at this group and say, don't want to get involved with that.
Yeah.
But see, there are always people like Kristy Childs who say, you know, we need to help the others along as well. So it does take a community, and it does
does.
take cooperation. And I think that you're offering them hope, and you're offering them opportunity. When women get off the street, are they embarrassed about their past? Does their past keep them from, if people find out, does it keep them from getting a decent job? What effect does the past of prostitution have on the future of these women?
Well, we know the stigma that comes along
we
with
do.
prostitution.
Yeah, we do.
And so there's the stigma. So a lot don't want to be known. That's part of it. Some become advocates, like myself, and really have come to terms with it and really,
But that is you. That's part of you.
yes.
Yeah.
And some do have shame. Not everyone is the same. So everyone's situation is different. But I mean, we still as a culture have a huge stigma attached to that, but we're not stigmatizing the men that are the driving force of why this happens in the first place.
In other words, if there is no market for the service goes away. So yes. The other issue, you know, we're talking about substance abuse, we're talking about young girls, but we are not talking about social diseases. And that's a real problem.
I would say it is, but it is all across the
Oh, it is.
community.
Oh, for sure.
Not just with this population.
No, that's for sure.
I found when I was in the life, we were taught how to
Take care of yourself.
how to watch for those things, how to manage those and take care of ourselves. When women get so far out on drugs, sometimes
They
the
don't
drug
notice.
is driving it so hard, these women, that they end up not caring for themselves. So those things can happen. But we also have men out there that are raping that are HIV positive.
Oh, there's no question about it. But I think that the difference is that the prostitutes are hesitant to come forward. Don't you think so? Do you think they're more likely to go get treatment, or
if they're dealing with their substance abuse? Yeah.
do you? It's a tough situation. Talk about your plans for the future. Talk about the house that you need for Veronica's voice.
Well, we're looking. We're currently looking.
Yeah.
You know, I hope I was hoping by April we would have found what we're doing and go for it. Hopefully by May, because I really want the women in the house before Thanksgiving.
How many are we talking about?
Probably 5. You know, we just want a home where we can put the women and, you know, start them on their process. And
Are you going to choose carefully those 5, or the first come, first served?
We definitely are going to be sure that they're in a place that they are ready and wanting change.
Yeah, because if they don't, it just becomes a bed to flop in overnight,
Right.
and out the door they go.
Right, and that's not what it'll be. You know, this is going to be, we're building a community within our community of sisters, and then there we want the community to come alongside us and empower this work and help us to do this work, be it with the gifts they have, the financial backing they have, whatever it is that they can do to pour into this.
They have to want to get off drugs first.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So, yeah, and that's tough sometimes. Are you going to take the children too?
We're not going to take children.
So the 5 women have to be without children to start with anyway. Well, I
And you know,
understand.
it's going to be 5 women, long term. It's not going to be a bunch of numbers for short term. I mean, because I look at like drug treatment. So the women go into drug treatment, and in 30 days, 28 days, 21 days, whatever it is,
send them back
they're
out.
done. And the thing is, then they're back in drug treatment again.
and
then
back
they're
with the same
again.
people that they, yeah.
But they're back again and again, and this is government funding, right? But because numbers and time and all that is, you know, we don't want to do that. We want it to be we want to be in it for the long haul.
And economically stable.
And we can't help these women unless we help them economically as well.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
They have to have a job.
Absolutely.
And they have to be able to make a living for themselves. And you know, they may want to establish a whole different kind of life too.
That's right.
And they need that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because as you said before, often they're stigmatized, and it's really tough to reinvent oneself. I guess that's really, and that's hard to do. You know that.
Yeah, not everyone is me and wants to talk about their experience and get people to understand
But I guess
what
it took
is.
you a while to be able to do that too.
I was really afraid, to come out with the truth.
It's tough. It is tough. But I would venture to suggest to you that you are selling hope, and you're selling the opportunity for a different life. And I hope that some of these folks out there will. How might they contact you if they would like to help? Would you like for them to, or would you like for me to contact me and then I?
No, they can contact us directly.
Okay.
Veronica's Voice, we have a website, it's veronicasvoice.org. They can contact us through that website, or they can, if they want to volunteer, we have a volunteer at veronicasvoice.org email. If they just want to send general information, they can send it to me, which is Kristy at veronicasvoice.org. So just whatever.
Well, I hope that somebody will call with help so that you can find a house and offer these women something that they probably have never, ever experienced, because most of them don't come from Leave It to Beaver kinds of families.
Yeah, that's true.
They just don't.
That's true.
Are you in touch with anybody in your family, or was that severed at 12?
I have attempted
To go back?
Yeah, and when things haven't changed, you just kind of
don't wanna do
move
that.
along. I do have siblings that I have a relationship with.
And they know about you, of course. But they stayed at home.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, everyone reacts different, and I know they were definitely abused. They were boys, and they eventually ran the abuser out of the home when they got big enough to do
Yeah,
so.
that's good. Well, as I say, thank you very much, Kristy Childs, for talking about Veronica's Voice. I think that we need to go back and talk about Becca Stevens, and she said that her 5 women can help change a whole community, and I hope that your 5 do as well. So I wish you well, and I know that it will happen.
Thank you.
So thanks, Kristy, and thank you for meeting a new friend. And if you want to help, Kristy's right there to show you how to do that. So come again. It's our community, and I'm Mary Davidson, and I'm so glad you're with us. Bye.